The Dubliners were formed by accident. I was working with Barney McKenna with John Malloy in the Gate Theatre, and we used to go to Donoghue's to get paid because John Malloy lived in Ely Place. And we used to go over there to get the few bob. And Barney and I one day said to Paddy O'Donoghue, do you mind if we play a tune? And Paddy said, yeah, but keep it down, lad, you know. So Barney and I, from that day, I think it was on a Christmas Eve. No doubt Barney had a different version, but as far as I'm concerned, it was some Christmas Eve.
At that time in Dublin, you couldn't play in pubs. The attitude in pubs in Dublin was a drink up and shut up. So if you sang a song, they'd stop you, and if you took out a musical instrument, they'd call the guards. You had to go to the country and read a country place called Raheny, and that's where you could have a session once you were out that far. That was, well, it was in the country that time. But then I met Ronnie one time, we went down, there was a little session on in Maldridge Street. Do you remember there was a kind of a folk club or something in that area, and I met him, and I had the banjo. Somebody said, would you play a tune on the, I think could have been heading now for O'Donoghue's or from it, or I played like a couple of tunes, and so Ronnie he asked me could he, there's a bit of a gig going on in the Gate, I think it was in the Gate. Now, not the big gate, you know, the little gate, the Gate Theatre in Parnell Square. There was a little bit of a review going on or something like that, so to play a little bit of background music.
Later on, say in the beginning of the next year, Luke came home from England, and I met him in the International Bar. And I said, Barney myself going to Donoghue's, so he came up to Donoghue's. And Kieran Burke was studying agriculture in University College, which was just up the road in Earlsford Terrace at that time. And he used to come in there, you know, for a drink, a drink. And so one day we just got together, and Luke had brought back some great songs from England. And up to this point, I'd been only singing, you know, mainly Irish songs. I had a great interest in all the old songs, and still have. But Luke had brought these new songs, and it put a whole different view on things, you know. There were sort of songs written in the same idiom, but referring to more modern things, you know. And so it was great to meet Luke. And Kieran then played the whistle, and he had a good few songs in Gaelic and in Irish, and not in Gaelic and in Irish, just in Gaelic. And you know, he used to sing them, and we got together and we'd have a song there, just enjoying ourselves. And eventually somebody asked us, you know, would you like to play in our place? I think it was a place called The Hunt or Moon out in Ashbourne or somewhere, or Ashbourne House. It was a hotel, and for a few bob. So we said certainly. So that was the start of the Dubliners, really.
This fella called Colin Reid brought us out to Hout. He's from Hout, and he got us a gig in the Abbey Tavern, and the crowd started to come there, and so then we kind of we moved from the Abbey Tavern over to the Royal Hotel. There was a little bit of a story how that happened. We were kind of half sacked and half left. We went into the Royal Hotel still in Hout Village. But the crowds kept coming out to the Abbey, and they'd come up to the, expecting we were there, and then they'd go up to the Royal Hotel. Now, by this time they were all out in Hout, so everyone done well.
After about a year, Luke decided he was going back to England again. So then, we at this stage were playing in the Royal Hotel in Howth, and John Sheehan and Bobby Lynch used to do the sort of interval, or you know what they now call it, support band.
I used to play with a chap called Bob Lynch. I was dragged out of Cady bands and playing in my front parlour, and Bob inveigled me to join him as a duo and some of the gigs around Dublin, but just at the start of the revival of the folk scene, I suppose. And it took a lot of persuading, but Bob kept bringing me up, and eventually I went up to his house. And we played a few tunes, and he was delighted with the result, and he rang up Peggy Jordan, who was a kind of an agent for booking folk acts at the time. And he got me to play the Mason's Apron into the telephone. And Peggy was listening at the far end, and Bob beckoned me when I was finished, said, that's okay, and he continued on the conversation with Peggy. And he comes into the front room and he says, that's grand, you passed the audition, we have 3 gigs next week as a duo. And I worked with Bob for about a year like that, and then when Luke left the Dubliners around, when would it be? Around 63, I suppose. It left a big gap in the group, of course, and at the time the lads were doing a regular Saturday night show in the Abbey Tavern and then in the Royal Hotel in Howth. And so they asked Bob and myself if we'd come in and fill in during what Ronnie called the porter break. And we did that for a couple of weeks, and then rather than go home after doing our spot, we just joined in with the lads for the second half, and people started talking about the new lads in the group. And we just kind of stayed on, you know.
When Luke came back after another year, Bobby Lynch left. And so that left John there. So John's been there almost since the beginning.
Young men, all of us in their teenagers, except Kieran, and Kieran would be very early 20s, and Ronnie in his mid-20s, because Ronnie is the eldest of the group. And you see, beards weren't accepted with young people in the 60s. That's a fact. I mean, on the continent, they'd be looking at you and they'd be whistling at you. Did you not know that? You realise that yourself? You know? And then we got used to it. And long hair wasn't accepted either. So the only one they accepted with a beard was Christ, you know. Except the elderly men, older men. Like, you ever see the old photographs? And the old seamen used to have, the fishermen and sailors had beards, and the old soldiers, see, they must have had big moustaches with no beard. Do you know the 40s? Well, in the 60s, it wasn't much more than that. You know, if you were elder Santa Claus could have one as well. And their Lord, that was all. And you had to be over 50 to have it, to be accepted, yeah.
When we got on stage, we more or less recreated, without consciously doing so, what we were doing in the pub. And then there was such a contrast in the two voices. In Luke's voice, Luke had a beautiful singing voice. I mean, Luke could have been a great singer in any medium, I think. I mean, he had a lovely, clear voice. And then, on the other hand, I had this strange voice, which sounded a lot, in them days, you'd say it down a bit like that. It got a little bit sort of, at least more mellow. That's the only change I can say that happened to it for the good. But I think the contrast, and Luke was very generous. He'd have a song and say, no, I think that'll suit you better. There was no sort of competition, which was nice. And Barney just slotted in there, and Barney was is a great player, but at them days he just rode in and we played, and we didn't do any organising or arranging or anything of that nature. It just did what we were doing.
It was pretty chaotic, I suppose, really. I mean, on the one hand, there was an amazing raw talent there amongst all the members of the group, but it wasn't quite harnessed for commercial purposes, I suppose, and I could see a need for that to be done. I mean, there was late nights, and there was me still in my ESB job at the time, and I can remember on one occasion I was trying to get the lads out of the pub after the gig to get back to Dublin so that I could get into work the next day. And I came up with a plan. There was no sign of any move to get home. It was a case of, just one more drink now and we'd be on the road. And then I said, come on lads, are we going? Jesus, this man over in the corners after buying us a drink, we can't go now. It'd look very bad if we didn't buy him one back, and this kind of thing. So eventually I sneaked over to the young barman and I gave him a £5, which was a good bit of money at the time. So I closed the bar. For Christ, I closed the bar after the next round. So the next round came and the bar didn't close, and the next and the next. So I was eventually driving back to Dublin about 5 in the morning, and Ronnie was sitting beside me. I said, Ronnie, he was some louser, that young barman. I gave him £5 to close the bar about 2 hours ago. I said, Ronnie, you weren't smart enough. I gave him a tenner to keep it open.